Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed citizens, and honored guests, it is a privilege to stand before you today, sharing my story not as a symbol of success or greatness, but as a testament to the enduring power of resilience, transformation, and the belief that every person, no matter their past, has the capacity to shape their future. Many of you may know me as a man who was once confined behind prison walls, labeled and written off by society. But today I stand before you as the president, not because of my past mistakes, but because of the choices I made to rise above them. Today I want to share not just my story, but the broader message that we all have the power to transform our lives, to break free from the chains of our past, and to become the people we were always meant to be. I was once a prisoner, but I am not defined by my past. The journey from that prison cell to this podium was not easy, and it did not happen overnight. It took time, it took dedication, and it took the unshakable belief that change was possible. Resilience is not just the ability to endure hardship, it's the ability to thrive despite it. When we are faced with adversity, it often feels as though the world is closing in and the path forward is blurred by the weight of our struggles. For me, resilience meant finding the strength to stand tall, even when the walls around me seemed insurmountable. It was not a one-time act of defiance, but rather a daily commitment to rising above my circumstances. Prison, in its most brutal form, strips away a person's sense of identity. It forces you to confront the worst parts of yourself, the mistakes you've made, and the moments you wish you could erase. But within that struggle, resilience emerges not as an escape, but as a means of transformation. It becomes the force that pushes you to learn, to reflect, and to evolve, even when everything around you suggests it would be easier to give in. In my time in prison, I was often told that I would never amount to anything, that my past would forever define me. The system, the people, the expectations of society, they all echoed this sentiment. But resilience is built on the refusal to accept those limitations. It's a deep, internal drive that says, "This will not define me, I will define my path." It wasn't just about surviving. It was about actively creating a new version of myself, one that didn't accept defeat, one that believed in the possibility of change. Resilience comes in many forms. For some, it's small acts of courage, deciding to speak up, to ask for help, or to forgive oneself for past mistakes. For others, it's about making the decision to never give up, even when faced with what seems like an endless battle. In my case, resilience meant taking responsibility for my past actions, understanding their consequences, and using those lessons to fuel my growth. It meant surrounding myself with people who believed in second chances and taking the opportunities that were available, no matter how small they seemed. But perhaps the most profound aspect of resilience is the ability to keep going even when hope seems lost. It is during the darkest times that the most significant growth happens. There were days when I felt hopeless, days when I questioned whether my future could be anything other than what I had known before. But in those moments, I found that resilience is not about never feeling defeated, it's about rising again and again after every fall. It is important to remember that resilience is not a destination, but a journey. Each step, each day of overcoming, each choice made in the face of adversity contributes to the building of a stronger, more determined person. In the depths of struggle, resilience is a whisper that tells us this too shall pass. It's the belief that no matter how hard the struggle, it does not have to define us. It can refine us. Transformation is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience. It is the capacity to change, to evolve, and to break free from the constraints of our past and present. It is the ability to reinvent ourselves, not based on what we were, but based on what we aspire to become. In the context of my journey, transformation was the key that unlocked the possibility of a future I once thought impossible. When I was in prison, I was not only physically confined, but mentally and emotionally as well. The labels that were attached to me, the criminal, the prisoner, the failure, were heavy chains that I carried every day. I had made mistakes, and I felt the weight of them. But the turning point came when I realized that those mistakes did not have to be the final chapter of my story. I was not bound by the person I had been. I was free to redefine who I could become. And that realization, that transformative power within, is what gave me hope for the future. Transformation begins with self-awareness. It requires us to confront the uncomfortable truths about ourselves, the flaws, the mistakes, the decisions that brought us to where we are. But self-awareness is not about self-criticism. It is about understanding our patterns and behaviors and deciding that we are capable of doing better. I had to look inward, to face my own flaws and shortcomings head on, and ask myself, who do I want to be moving forward? What kind of person do I aspire to become, not just for myself, but for the people around me? Once I began to accept that transformation was possible, the work of change began. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't easy. Transformation requires patience and consistent effort. Every day I made the decision to be better than I was yesterday. I embraced education, sought out opportunities to learn, and surrounded myself with people who believed in the power of change. Through small steps, I began to rebuild myself. Each new skill learned, every book read, and every positive habit formed became a building block in my transformation. At the core of transformation is the ability to forgive oneself. The past, with all its mistakes and missteps, will always be a part of us. But it does not have to define us. To transform, we must learn to release the guilt, shame, and regret that bind us to our past actions. It's a process of letting go, not of forgetting, but of accepting that we are more than our mistakes. Transformation is the realization that our past does not dictate our future. Moreover, transformation requires a shift in mindset. It is about believing that change is possible, not just for others, but for ourselves. We often hear stories of people who have turned their lives around, but we don't always realize that the transformation they underwent started with a fundamental belief: I can change. It's a belief that no matter how far we've fallen, no matter how many times we've stumbled, we can rise again. We can take control of our lives and direct our future with intention and purpose. In my journey, transformation was not a solitary endeavor. It involved the support of others, whether it was the guidance of mentors, the encouragement of family, or the solidarity of fellow inmates who share the same desire for change. Transformation is not an isolated act, it's a communal process. It requires external support, but more importantly, it requires a willingness to embrace change from within. Only when we open ourselves up to the possibility of transformation can we begin the process of true, lasting change. In the end, the power of transformation lies in its universality. No one is beyond redemption. No one is too broken to change. The key to transformation is not waiting for the world to change around us, but actively choosing to change ourselves. It is in the small, consistent efforts we make each day that we begin to see the fruits of transformation, shifting our mindset, rebuilding our character, and ultimately shaping the future we desire. The power to transform lies in our hands. We are not defined by where we start, but by where we choose to go. Hope is a powerful force. It is the spark that keeps us moving when the world feels dark, the flame that ignites our will to rise above circumstances, and the belief that, despite everything, tomorrow holds the possibility of something better. In my journey from prisoner to president, I have come to realize that hope is not just a passive feeling, it is an active choice. It is something we cultivate within ourselves, even when the odds seem insurmountable, and it is a gift we share with others. For so long, I was told that I was a lost cause. Society had written me off, labeling me as someone unworthy of redemption or change. I was confined not just by physical walls, but by the societal judgment that told me that my mistakes would forever dictate my value. But in that darkness, I chose to hold on to hope. Hope wasn't about ignoring the reality of my situation, it was about recognizing that, even within the confines of my past, I could still choose to believe that something greater awaited me. Hope is not about denying the pain or the struggle, but about finding the strength to endure through it. In many ways, I became a symbol of hope not just for myself, but for others who were in similar situations. When I looked around, I saw men and women who felt trapped by their past, unable to see beyond the prison walls they lived behind. And yet, through the lens of hope, I understood that we all have the potential to break free, not only from the literal confines of a prison, but from the invisible prisons of our minds and hearts. Our hope gives us the courage to change, to believe in our own capacity for transformation, and to refuse to be defined by what we have done in the past. Hope is contagious. When we hold on to hope for ourselves, we inadvertently inspire others to do the same. There were days when I felt utterly alone, but I would see a fellow inmate or a person struggling in their own journey, and I realized that my hope was a quiet act of resistance. It was proof that, despite our circumstances, there is always room for growth, always a chance for something better. The power of hope lies in its ability to transcend individual struggles, creating a ripple effect that can touch those around us. And when we begin to share that hope with others, we become part of a collective movement toward positive change. This notion of hope as a symbol is also deeply tied to the idea of second chances. When I was released from prison, it wasn't just my life that was being given a new chance, it was a representation of what was possible for anyone who had been cast aside. I was no longer a prisoner in the eyes of society. I was a person who had been given the opportunity to prove that transformation is not just a fantasy, but a reality. And that symbol, that tangible proof of what hope can achieve, became a beacon for others to look to when they felt as though there was no way out. The symbol of hope is not only for those who have fallen, but for those who are standing on the sidelines, unsure if change is possible. It's for the individuals who find themselves in a moment of doubt, who question whether the world has anything left to offer them. To these people, I say, look at what is possible. Look at what has been achieved, not through extraordinary circumstances, but through ordinary, persistent hope. Hope is not something that happens overnight. It is cultivated through every small decision, every act of resilience, and every refusal to give up. Being a symbol of hope is not about being perfect. It is about showing that even in imperfection, there is room for growth. It is about embracing the journey, acknowledging the setbacks, and continuing to move forward. In my own journey, I was not always certain of the future, and there were days when I questioned whether my hope was misplaced. But what I came to realize is that hope doesn't require certainty, it only requires the willingness to believe that better things are possible. It's the belief that, no matter how hard the road may be, there is a light at the end of it. And perhaps the most profound aspect of being a symbol of hope is realizing that, while my story may be unique, the potential for hope exists in every single one of us. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment to change, it's about believing that change is possible in the here and now. Hope is an internal force that can break down the barriers of doubt, and it is this hope that can inspire us to reach for something greater, something beyond what we thought we were capable of achieving. Personal accountability is the cornerstone of growth, transformation, and self improvement. It is the ability to take responsibility for one's actions, choices, and decisions without shifting the blame or making excuses. Accountability is not about self punishment or being overly critical of oneself. It is about acknowledging the consequences of our actions, learning from them, and using those lessons to better ourselves moving forward. In my own journey, personal accountability was the first step in my transformation, and it remains the most critical principle that guides my decisions today. When I found myself behind prison walls, I had no choice but to confront my past. The reality of my situation was undeniable. I had made mistakes, serious mistakes that had affected not just my life, but the lives of others. The people I had wronged, the trust I had broken, and the opportunities I had squandered were all part of the harsh truth that I had to face. And facing it was not easy. It was uncomfortable, it was painful, and at times it felt unbearable. But personal accountability is about confronting those uncomfortable truths without running from them. It's about looking directly at the mistakes we've made, acknowledging their impact, and taking ownership of our actions. One of the most important lessons I learned in prison was that blaming others or circumstances for my situation would only keep me trapped. It's easy to point fingers and find scapegoats, whether it's society, our upbringing, or our environment, but that approach leaves us powerless. We cannot change the things that are outside of our control, but we can control how we respond to them. By accepting full responsibility for my actions, I reclaimed the power to change my future. Accountability gave me the agency to make different choices, to rewrite my narrative, and to stop being a victim of my circumstances. Personal accountability is also essential in the journey of self improvement because it fosters integrity. Integrity is the alignment of our values with our actions. It is about being true to ourselves, even when no one is watching, and owning up to our mistakes instead of trying to conceal them. When we fail to hold ourselves accountable, we erode our integrity. This erosion can spiral into more bad decisions, more justifications, and more dishonesty. But when we hold ourselves accountable, we act with honor, and we begin to develop a sense of trust not just from others, but within ourselves. Taking responsibility for our actions doesn't mean that we are perfect. It doesn't mean that we won't make mistakes along the way, or that we should expect immediate success. In fact, accountability is often most important in times of failure, when it is all too easy to look for excuses. But accountability means that when we fall short, we take a hard look at why we fell short, how we can learn from it, and what we can do differently next time. It means accepting the fact that no one is infallible, but that each mistake is an opportunity for growth. This willingness to acknowledge our flaws and work on them is what builds resilience and character. One of the most significant aspects of personal accountability is the ability to make amends. It's one thing to take responsibility for our actions internally, but it's another to make reparations where possible. Accountability requires us to repair the damage we have caused, whether it's through asking for forgiveness, paying restitution, or simply doing better in the future. For me, the journey to personal accountability involved not just acknowledging my mistakes, but taking proactive steps to make things right. It was about reaching out to those I had hurt, making restitution, and showing through my actions that I was committed to becoming a better person. Furthermore, personal accountability is not just about the big mistakes or actions, it is also about the small, everyday choices that accumulate over time. Every decision we make, whether it's how we treat others, how we approach challenges, or how we manage our time, reflects our commitment to accountability. Accountability means being honest with ourselves about the choices we make. even in the seemingly insignificant moments. It's easy to overlook the small decisions, but they are often the ones that shape our character and ultimately determine our success or failure. The road to personal accountability can be humbling. It often requires us to admit things we'd rather not acknowledge, to confront parts of ourselves that we buried or ignored. But in doing so, we liberate ourselves. We free ourselves from the burden of denial, the weight of guilt, and the shame of evading responsibility. When we accept responsibility for our actions, we reclaim our power to change and grow. Accountability is the foundation of authenticity. It allows us to live with integrity and to be proud of who we are, knowing that we are constantly working to become better. The choices we make, both big and small, are the threads that weave together the fabric of our future. Every decision we make is like a seed, and the path we walk is shaped by the choices we plant along the way. In my journey from prison to the presidency, I came to realize that life is not defined by the circumstances we are born into, but by the decisions we make in the face of those circumstances. The future is not something that happens to us, it is something we create through our actions, our intentions, and our choices. When I found myself incarcerated, the weight of my choices was clear. I had made decisions that led me to that point, choices that affected my life and the lives of others in profound ways. At that moment, I had two options. I could remain trapped in the past, blaming my environment or my circumstances for my predicament, or I could take responsibility for the choices I had made and begin to make new ones. The latter was not easy, but it was essential. I realized that I had the power to shape my future, not by changing my past, but by making the right choices moving forward. The power of choice lies in its ability to redirect our path. Even in the most difficult situations, we always have the ability to choose how we respond. This realization was transformative for me. In prison, I could have chosen to give in to bitterness, anger, and despair. I could have blamed society, my upbringing, or the system for my mistakes. But instead, I chose to embrace the idea that I had control over my actions. I chose to focus on what I could change rather than what I could not. It was through this mindset shift that I began to rebuild my life. Every choice, no matter how small it seems, has a ripple effect. When I made the decision to engage in education, to develop new skills, or to build positive relationships with others, those small choices began to accumulate into something much greater. Each decision was a step toward a new future, a future that was not defined by my past, but by the potential I saw in myself. The decisions we make on a daily basis are the building blocks of our success. They may not yield immediate results, but over time they shape our destiny. Our choices also affect the people around us. When we choose to act with integrity, to make positive changes in our lives, we inspire others to do the same. I saw this clearly in prison, where many of my fellow inmates, like myself, were looking for a way out, not just physically but emotionally and mentally. By making the choice to pursue personal growth and accountability, I became a living example of what was possible. And as I made better choices, I began to influence the environment around me in positive ways. The ripple effect of my decisions reached others, creating a chain reaction of change. The power of choice extends far beyond the individual. It can impact entire communities and shape the course of history. The beauty of choice is that it is never too late to start making better decisions. It doesn't matter how far we've fallen or how many wrong turns we've taken, we can always choose to do things differently. The moment I realized this, my entire perspective on life shifted. I stopped seeing myself as a prisoner of my past and began to see myself as a creator of my future. I understood that I could no longer control the circumstances of my past, but I had full control over how I would respond to those circumstances moving forward. This concept of choice is empowering because it reminds us that we are not victims of fate. While we may not always have control over external events, we always have control over how we choose to react. The choices we make today shape the world we will live in tomorrow. This principle became a driving force in my life, helping me to overcome the challenges of imprisonment, to rise above societal expectations, and to transform my future into something unrecognizable from the man I once was. In the broader context, the role of choice is critical for everyone. Our world is full of distractions, obstacles, and pressures that can often make us feel like we have no control over our direction. But the truth is that we have the power to choose how we respond to life's challenges. Whether it's choosing to take responsibility for our actions, choosing to stay focused on our goals despite setbacks, or choosing to cultivate relationships that nourish our growth, these choices determine the course of our lives. The choices we make also have the power to define who we are as individuals. Our character is not built from the moments of triumph, but from the decisions we make in the face of adversity. When life tests us, it is our choices that reveal our true strength. Do we choose to persevere when things get tough? Do we choose to act with kindness and integrity when faced with the temptation to do otherwise? Do we choose to learn from our mistakes and grow, or do we choose to remain stagnant, weighed down by regret? Each choice we make contributes to the person we become, and each choice is an opportunity to become a better version of ourselves. The importance of choice also lies in its ability to give us agency. No matter what circumstances we are born into or what challenges we face, we always have the ability to make choices that can move us forward. This sense of agency is empowering because it tells us that we are not powerless, we are active participants in shaping our future. Life does not happen to us. We happen to life through the decisions we make. Choosing to make the right decisions, no matter how difficult, is what ultimately leads to a life of fulfillment, purpose, and success. It's about making intentional decisions, understanding their consequences, and using them to carve out the life we want. It's a process that takes time, patience, and commitment, but it is through the choices we make that we define our future and our legacy. The road ahead is shaped by the choices we make today. The environment we create around ourselves plays a pivotal role in shaping the trajectory of our lives. The people we associate with, the energy they bring, and the values they uphold can either propel us forward or hold us back. As I transitioned from prisoner to president, one of the most significant realizations I had was the power of the people who surround us. We are in many ways a reflection of the company we keep. In my journey, I learned that the right influences can inspire us, challenge us, and help us grow, while the wrong ones can deepen our struggles, perpetuate negative habits, and stunt our potential. When I first entered prison, I found myself in an environment filled with negativity, despair, and anger. Most people around me had resigned themselves to the idea that their lives were already determined. The culture within the prison was often one of survival, and many individuals were simply trying to get through the day without making waves. While some had given up on themselves, I knew deep down that I could not allow that same attitude to take root in my own life. It was at that point I realized that my personal growth and transformation could not happen in isolation. It required seeking out individuals who could challenge and inspire me to be better. In prison, I began to gravitate toward people who exhibited qualities I admired: discipline, perseverance, hope, and a willingness to learn. Some were older inmates who had found peace through education or spirituality, while others were individuals who had been on similar paths to mine but had decided to change. They showed me that it was possible to overcome one's past, to grow, and to pursue something greater. These individuals became my mentors, my sources of wisdom, and my role models. They taught me that the right influences have the power to transform our thinking, broaden our perspectives, and guide us in making better decisions. Surrounding ourselves with positive influences doesn't always mean choosing people who are perfect or who have it all figured out. It's about choosing people who encourage us to grow, people who challenge us to be our best selves. Positive influences are individuals who lift us up even when we are down, who see the potential in us when we cannot see it in ourselves, and who hold us accountable when we fall short. It's the individuals who offer wisdom, advice, and support, whether they are family members, mentors, or friends, that can provide the foundation we need to reach new heights. In prison, this positive reinforcement became my anchor, a guiding light that helped me navigate the overwhelming darkness. But positive influences aren't limited to people alone. They also extend to the books we read, the ideas we expose ourselves to, and the activities we engage in. In prison, I made a conscious effort to fill my mind with uplifting and educational content. I devoured books on philosophy, history, leadership, and personal growth. The ideas I encountered in those pages had a profound effect on my thinking and my understanding of the world. They shaped my beliefs, my values, and my worldview. I realized that the more I exposed myself to positive and transformative ideas, the more I could challenge the negativity around me and cultivate a mindset of growth and possibility. However, the impact of positive influences doesn't come without effort. In many ways, we have to be proactive in seeking out the right people and environments. It's easy to fall into the trap of staying in familiar circles, especially when we are surrounded by people who share our struggles or our negative habits. But if we want to grow, we must actively seek out those who will challenge us to rise above our limitations. In my case, it meant stepping outside of the comfort zones of old friendships and relationships that kept me anchored in the past. It required me to build new connections, relationships based on mutual respect, shared goals, and a common vision for a better future. In addition, we must recognize that at times we may have to be that positive influence for others. As I began to transform my own life, I realized that I had a responsibility to share the lessons I had learned with others. This idea of paying it forward became a critical part of my journey. By offering support, encouragement, and guidance to others, I not only helped them but also strengthened my own resolve to continue evolving. Positive influence isn't a one-way street. When we contribute to the growth of others, we reinforce the same principles of self-improvement in our own lives. However, while positive influences are essential, we must also be mindful of the negative influences that can hold us back. Toxic relationships, environments filled with negativity, and people who seek to drag us down with them must be avoided at all costs. I encountered individuals during my time in prison who, despite their potential, chose to remain in the cycle of negativity, constantly blaming the world for their misfortune. They surrounded themselves with people who echoed their discontent and reinforced their helplessness. I understood that, in order to protect my own growth, I needed to distance myself from these negative forces. Their mindset was contagious, and I could not afford to let it seep into my own. The importance of surrounding ourselves with positive influences extends beyond the immediate circle of friends and mentors. It also includes the environments we choose to put ourselves in. For example, when I was released from prison, I made the conscious decision to put myself in spaces that fostered my growth, whether it was through joining educational programs, attending leadership workshops, or engaging in communities of like-minded individuals. The physical and mental spaces we occupy influence the choices we make, and the people within those spaces can either elevate us or pull us down. Ultimately, the people we surround ourselves with can either be a source of support or a weight that holds us back. As we strive for personal growth, we must actively cultivate relationships with those who push us to become better, who support our goals, and who share a vision of the future that aligns with our own. Positive influences don't just guide us, they remind us that no matter how difficult the journey, we do not have to walk it alone. They help us to see our potential and help us stay on track when the road gets tough. Through their wisdom, encouragement, and belief in us, we are reminded that transformation is not only possible, it is inevitable when we surround ourselves with the right people and ideas. Perseverance and resilience are the bedrock of success, particularly in the face of hardship. These two qualities are what allow us to continue moving forward, even when the road seems impossibly difficult or when we are faced with setbacks that feel insurmountable. My journey from being a prisoner to becoming president was not a linear path. It was marked by failures, challenges, and moments of doubt. But it was through perseverance and resilience that I was able to overcome these obstacles and ultimately achieve a level of success that many thought was impossible for someone with my background. When I was incarcerated, there were countless times when I felt as though the walls were closing in on me. I was surrounded by individuals who had given up on themselves, who were consumed by their mistakes and trapped by the circumstances they found themselves in. There were moments when I too felt like giving up, when the weight of the world seemed too heavy to bear. But it was in those moments of despair that I realized that the only way out was through. I could not afford to let my current situation define my future. I had to be resilient in the face of adversity, to persist even when everything seemed to be working against me. Perseverance is about having the strength to continue, even when the journey is long and arduous. It is about recognizing that setbacks are not permanent roadblocks, but temporary obstacles that can be overcome. In prison, every day felt like a challenge. The monotony of life behind bars, the limitations on my freedom, and the stigma of my past weighed heavily on me. But I chose to persevere. I chose to use my time in prison as an opportunity for growth rather than as a prison for my mind. I focused on learning new skills, improving myself, and preparing for a future beyond the prison gates. There were days when it felt as though my efforts were in vain, when progress seemed non-existent. But the key to perseverance is faith, that small, quiet belief that your efforts will eventually bear fruit, even if you can't see the immediate results. Resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to bounce back after a setback. It is the mental toughness that allows us to withstand the blows that life deals us without being crushed by them. Resilience is what separates those who achieve greatness from those who give up in the face of adversity. When I was released from prison, the challenges did not magically disappear. I still faced societal judgment, skepticism from others, and a lack of resources to get started. But my resilience, my ability to pick myself up after every failure, every rejection, every moment of doubt was what kept me moving forward. It was resilience that pushed me to continue, even when the odds were stacked against me. The power of perseverance and resilience is not just about enduring hardship, it is about learning and growing through it. Every challenge I faced in my journey was an opportunity for me to develop these qualities further. In prison, I had to learn how to deal with rejection, how to persevere in the face of limited opportunities, and how to keep my spirits high when everything seemed to be going wrong. Each of these challenges taught me valuable lessons about myself, about my strength, and about the power of resilience. These lessons, in turn, equipped me to face the even greater challenges that awaited me on the outside. One of the most profound realizations I had during my time of imprisonment was that perseverance and resilience are not just personal virtues, they are contagious. When we persevere through hardship, we inspire others to do the same. My journey, though difficult, became a source of inspiration for others who were also struggling. I saw men and women around me begin to believe in the possibility of change, to believe that their circumstances did not define their futures. This collective shift in mindset was a testament to the power of perseverance and resilience to transform not just individuals but entire communities. When we refuse to give up, we become a living example of what is possible. Perseverance and resilience also require a certain mindset. They require us to view challenges not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. The belief that we can overcome any difficulty, no matter how severe, is what fuels perseverance. But this mindset doesn't come naturally to everyone. It must be cultivated. It's about developing the mental fortitude to keep moving forward, even when you can't see the way ahead. It's about developing patience, knowing that success does not happen overnight but through consistent, determined effort. In my case, resilience became a way of life. It was not just about bouncing back from a single setback, it was about being able to withstand repeated failures and to keep striving toward my goals despite them. Whether it was struggling to find work after my release from prison, facing criticism from those who doubted my ability to succeed, or encountering obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome, resilience was what enabled me to stay the course. It was not a single act of strength, but a daily commitment to show up, to keep trying, and to not let the setbacks define me. It was this resilience that eventually led to breakthroughs both in my personal life and in my public life. Equally important is the understanding that resilience does not mean going it alone. In fact, it is often our ability to seek support from others that helps us build resilience. Surrounding ourselves with people who believe in us, who support us, and who help us see beyond our current struggles can make all the difference. When I felt like giving up, it was the encouragement from others, whether it was a mentor, a friend, or even a fellow inmate, that helped me push through the darkest moments. The power of community in building resilience cannot be underestimated. No one succeeds alone. It is through the support of others that we find the strength to keep going when we feel like we cannot continue. Perseverance and resilience are also about flexibility. Sometimes the path we envision for ourselves isn't the one we end up walking. Life throws curveballs that force us to adjust our plans. In these moments, resilience is not about stubbornly holding on to a plan that no longer serves us. It is about being adaptable, being willing to pivot, and finding new ways to move forward. Flexibility allows us to approach obstacles with creativity and open-mindedness. It helps us stay focused on the end goal, even when the path to that goal shifts unexpectedly. At the core of perseverance and resilience is the understanding that failure is not the end of the journey, it is part of it. In fact, failure is often the most important teacher we encounter on our way to success. It is through failure that we learn, grow, and build the strength to continue. Every time I stumbled, every mistake I made, and every door that was closed to me taught me something valuable. It was through this process of trial and error that I was able to refine my approach, to strengthen my resolve, and to develop the mental toughness required to face even greater challenges. In the end, perseverance and resilience are the forces that allow us to move from a place of struggle to a place of success. They are the foundation upon which we build our dreams, our goals, and our futures. Whether we are in prison, facing personal challenges, or striving to achieve greatness in any area of life, it is our ability to persevere in the face of adversity and to bounce back from setbacks that determines how far we will go. These qualities are not inherent, they are cultivated through practice, through experience, and through the unwavering belief that we can overcome whatever obstacles come our way. In conclusion, the journey from prisoner to president, from a life defined by mistakes to one defined by purpose, is a testament to the transformative power of perseverance, resilience, and the choices we make. It is a journey that shows us that no matter how bleak our circumstances may seem, we always have the power to change our future. By embracing personal accountability, surrounding ourselves with positive influences, and never losing sight of the bigger picture, we can overcome even the most challenging obstacles. The road to transformation is not easy, and it is often filled with setbacks and hardships. But it is through our ability to persevere, through our unwavering belief that we can rise above adversity, that we truly grow and evolve. Each decision, each challenge, and each moment of doubt becomes an opportunity to rebuild ourselves and our lives. As we move forward, let us remember that the journey is not about perfection, it is about progress. It is about having the courage to keep going when the path ahead seems unclear, and the resilience to rise each time we fall. No matter where we start, no matter the weight of our past, we all have the power to transform our future. So let us embrace the power within us, and let us never forget that the greatest triumphs often come from the most challenging beginnings. The future is ours to shape, and it begins with the choices we make today. Together, with perseverance, resilience, and an unwavering belief in our ability to rise, we can turn any struggle into a stepping stone for success.